How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We've got Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly here, and today will be the only day that we do not have a guest this week. We will be on the road Wednesday in Santa Ana. Tomorrow we'll have Dan Severin. Thursday we're going to have Rick Bassman of UPW and Don Callis, Friday Superstar Billy Graham, and of course talking about all the pro wrestling news. Brian, how was your weekend?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Kind of hectic, but did the 2 wrestling shows. Didn't get a lot of work done on the newsletter, but I think that hopefully tonight and tomorrow I'll be able to do that. So it was good.
Actually, I would say that this was the slowest weekend for wrestling news that I can remember. I mean, at any time.
Ever?
I mean, there was some. I don't know about ever, but I mean, there was a couple. WWF ran house shows, but there was nothing really. I couldn't say there's anything really newsworthy. WWF kind of does pattern house shows now. You know, I mean, they do something with Undertaker and Kane and Austin and Triple H. The baby faces go over. Then they usually put that on before intermission. They come back at the end of the show with something, usually with the Hardy Boys. They put them on last and put them over. And, that's kind of what they did, actually, over the weekend. Tonight, which will be the first of 2 straight nights in Denver for television tapings by the WWF. There is a blizzard in Denver, by the way. They're going to announce stipulations for the Steve Austin and Triple H against Undertaker and Kane 4-way title match. I think I don't know what the stipulations that are going to be added will be, but there'll be something. Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho take on Kurt Angle and William Regal in a submission tag team match, which is the pay-per-view match you were going to do. Actually, this is the pay-per-view match that they were going to do originally. And
rush things along.
Well, I'm not going to complain because Benoit and Angle doing a submission match on the pay-per-view for 30 minutes, guaranteed 30-minute match, might be a real classic match. Hopefully it will be because they're going to need it on this show. Then Rhino against Spike Dudley. I think we kind of all know what's going to happen there for the hardcore title. Right to Censor against Kai En Tai, which of course means Kai En Tai is going over because Right to Censor is doing the losing streak gimmick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Kai En Tai's getting the big push
to get ready for when they send him to WCW, right? And then Malenko Saturn and Eddie Guerrero against Grandmaster Sexay, Steve Blackman, and Raven. So it's more of a probably building up Raven and Eddie Guerrero for the pay-per-view, which is coming up on Sunday. And we only know, how many matches do we know? We know Big Show and Shane McMahon. We know Jericho and Regal, Benoit and Angle, the tag team title match. All 4 belts at stake. And I think I'm missing one match. Or am I missing a match?
I think that's it.
Well, they better, so we got nothing with the Hardys. Nothing with the Hardys, Edge and Christian Dudleys so far? Dudleys are going to be in there with the X Factor in some sort of match. I would figure it's 6-man. You know, Dudleys and Spike against the 3 members of the X Factor.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't been announced, but I'm pretty sure that's where the TV's been leading. So I guess we'll probably have a couple more matches announced tonight as well. Weekend poll results is, what did you think of
Thursday's? Yeah, they did announce all titles on the line for the Heat show last night, and that was like the absolute only thing of value on that show. And I remember when I started watching Heat because there was nothing else to watch, it was like the first week I thought, this is kind of fun. I haven't watched wrestling in a couple of days. It's an hour show. Just kind of laid back, everything like that. But after last night, I will never watch Heat again. It was horrible.
That bad, huh?
Just pointless. Pointless. They did the stupid
how was the dating game thing? I heard that was horrible.
Oh, my God, you wouldn't even have believed it. It was so bad. There wasn't even like a payoff at the end. It was like they do this whole dating game thing. They have the 3 biggest geeks you ever saw trying to get a date with Trish. And it ends up with the punchline is she chooses everybody as the winner, which just meant that all 3 guys and Trish blew a kiss to the audience, and the word smack appeared on the screen, and that was it. That was all.
Oh,
after the whole show build up.
Like the whole dating game show used to be. Did you ever watch a dating game when you were young?
I did not.
You did not? You didn't do anything except for
gymnastics. I didn't do anything when I was young that involved television.
You didn't watch TV. You didn't watch sports. Did you go to the movies?
I went to the movies every now and then.
Okay. This is a question for the weekend is, what did you think of SmackDown? 5% thought the show was excellent, 32% good, 35% average, 14% bad, 14% awful. Today's question. With the demise of WCW and ECW, would you say your interest in wrestling in general has A, declined greatly, B, declined somewhat, C, stayed the same, D, increased somewhat by following other companies, E, increased greatly by following other companies? So that's what's going on there. Today's Wall Street Journal has a front-page article on the XFL. Just read it about an hour or two ago. Very well written article. Just, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of articles actually today, kind of, now that the thing is actually over, kind of like, wrapping the year up and everything like that. And, there was like a sentence in that, which actually, the funny thing is when I read it, it's sort of like, I remember writing like a big, 2 or 3 page thing about, I think it was about a month or two before the XFL season started. And it was, basically, just analyzing, what was going to happen. I should read it back because it was probably pretty accurate. But the main gist of what I said, and the main gist of what everybody said, was the main gist of what everyone's saying now, which is that the major miscalculation was that they felt that they could somehow get the audience that likes fixed pro wrestling matches interested in a real sport, just because Vince McMahon was doing it, and clearly that didn't work. So anyway, XFL ended. The LA Extreme ended up winning the championship in the $1 million game. It was a blowout of a game, which no one's fault. It's how sports sometimes are. And, pretty much everyone's acknowledged that NBC won't be back for next year. Vince McMahon was at the game saying, that we'll be back next year. They had 24,000 at the game, which, for a league championship game, I think that's pretty disappointing, especially because a great deal of that was papered. And they gave the programs away for free. So,
I gotta say, that company like, $70 million that they just would have asked me, could have just said, would you ever watch a football game promoted by Vince McMahon? I would have said no. I'm a wrestling fan.
You ended up not watching one game, did you?
Didn't watch one.
Okay. You're the only one who didn't watch the first week. Let's see, FCC, of course, was last week, voted. A lot of stuff on the status of UPN. The FCC voted that Viacom, which owns CBS, would also be able to own UPN, so they wouldn't have to sell it off, which basically saves the network, at least temporarily. But then the network got some bad news in Media Week today. There was an article about the the pre-sale of ads for next season. Upfront dollars in advertising was going very poorly for UPN, and they were talking about how they were the only wrestling thing in it is that the SmackDown numbers have declined. Although when you actually look at it,
they took one rating.
No, they didn't take one rating. But if you look at from this season, which is from September on, they're 2% down from last season, which it is a decline. But when it comes to ratings, 2% means like nothing.
Yeah.
But the ratings have declined. Actually, they would be up through February. From September through February, the SmackDown numbers were up from September through February the first year because SmackDown, if you remember, started in the high 3s and gradually built up to almost consistent high 4s. Last year at that point was the building period. Then what happened, it was pretty much, staying in the high 4s, pretty consistent, mid to high 4s consistently through February when Survivor got put head to head with it. And then since then, it's kind of been in the low 4s, and then at 1 week did a 3-7, 2 weeks ago with a Jeff Hardy Triple H match. So anyway, that's what's, that's what's kind of going on there. Let's see. Any other news to get to? Any other big news over the weekend that I missed?
No.
Small news? Very slow. Very slow. As far as WCW relaunch, which everyone seems to ask about, there's nothing new. I'm going to try to see if I can find out more tomorrow, but as of the weekend, it was up in the air. I think that they would like it to be mid-June or July, but it's all, as far as I know, as of the weekend, it was still...
Mid-June?
Mid-June, yeah.
Isn't June 9th kind of mid-June?
Well, the original date was June 9th, yeah.
Okay. You got to push it back a little farther.
Not necessarily. I don't know. It depends on how meetings go and things like that. But, the basic gist is because of the XFL, the pressure on WWF to make this one work is probably it's absolutely far greater than it has ever been. And I think that they learned their lesson from the XFL that you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
If they learn one thing from XFL, and if it helps them with this WCW deal, then it wasn't a total loss.
Well, it's not a total loss. There's so much to learn from it. But if they come back next season, then they didn't learn a whole hell of a lot, did they?
No.
Okay. We'll hit some emails here. Let's see. Have you read the book, Pinfall's The School of Hard Knocks? Have you ever heard of that book?
Nope. Never.
Neither have I. Okay. Well, I haven't read it or heard of it. Let's see. I love the WCW Cruiserweight division recently, especially the 10-man Contenders Countdown match. Yeah, on that Thunder. That was a good show. I think it was on Thunder. Do you think the new WCW will carry on this great division?
No.
I think based on who they have on the roster at the beginning, they're pretty much going to be forced to. Over the long run, I think that they...
Yeah, but if there's 24 guys and, 23 of them are cruiserweights, they can't really call it the cruiserweight division, or they'll have, one heavyweight. I think it'll just be, more of a cruiserweight company.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay. What do we have here? First, I don't think anyone realizes what's going to happen when Triple H wins the tag team title. God, I think he's losing that match. But anyway, if I'm not mistaken, this will make him the second person ever to get the Grand Slam, World, Intercontinental, Tag Team, and European titles. It's only been done by Shawn Michaels. Isn't it ironic that he happens to be the second person? Well, it wouldn't be. And it doesn't really mean anything, because realistically, that's a nice trivia question, but it doesn't, mean anything. Nobody goes around and brags, I was, the only WF Grand Slam champion, and anyone says, you're a mark, go away. You know what I mean? It's not a...
Are you sure about that?
I'm never... maybe Shawn Michaels does, but no, nobody takes that seriously anyway.
Yeah.
What did you think of the great Sasuke? I
got the impression last night when they did the angle on Heat that they may lose. It was something like Vince, he's talking throughout the show about this is the most difficult decision or announcement I'm ever going to have to make to these two guys, and calls them into the office, and he basically says, I had to make some concessions to Linda because, she's crazy and back in charge or whatever, and I have to do what she says. And the belts are on the line. And they're like, oh, great, we want to win the tag titles. And he goes, no, actually, your belts are on the line, too. And it was like, they did 5 seconds of complaining about it, and then it was like, well, we'll just take the belts from them. And they kind of blew it off and walked out of the room like it was no big deal. So I was kind of thinking they might do a deal where Hunter loses his title only and maybe turns babyface as a result of it or something like that. But then how do you do, a Kane-Hunter feud? Because it looks to be where they're going.
That was the plan was a Kane-Hunter feud. The plan for the next pay-per-view has always been Undertaker and Austin for the WF title and Kane and Triple H for the Intercontinental. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the finish. Although, again, they may change that. It's not like these things are done well in advance. Second, what did you think of the Sasuke Jushin Liger match from the Super J Cup in 1995? I think that was actually around 1990. I think it wasn't 1995. I think it was before that, 93 or 94. But that was a awesome match. It was a great match. I want to bring to your attention the striking resemblance between Perry Saturn and superstar Billy Graham. Oh, I notice that every single time I see Perry Saturn on television. I was wondering if you could tell me where Mike Sharp is. I think he's living in the Northeast, and I don't know if he still got a school, but didn't Crowbar come from his school? Mike Sharp's school?
I think he did, yeah.
Yeah, with Jerry Toot. They were talking about that. This is from Jason Campbell, who says, is Gotch versus Hackenschmidt on film? While looking up some information, I found an article... Gotch and Hackenschmidt. Anyway, which was sent out as part of J. Michael Kenyon's Wowley Papers. It's taken from an unnamed Chicago newspaper. For the first time in the history of moving pictures industry, pictures were taken of an event and displayed to the public the same day when films of the Gotch-Hackenschmidt match held yesterday afternoon were shown at the Majestic Theater at the close of the performance.
I think Vern Gagne taped over him.
No, I know. I remember, in fact, I saw, actually it was in this week's Observer, believe it or not. Or was it? Yeah, the one that just came out. I actually had mentioned that the reason that George Hackenschmidt made, I think it was $74,000 or $73,000 in 1911 for that match, which is an incredible amount of money, was because his managers had signed a contract which would have given him, I believe, 25% of the moving pictures revenue, and it ended up being a huge hit in movies because they were
right. I remember that. You wrote something about film rights, and I thought, what the hell is Dave talking about here? Film rights?
Yeah, because it was one of the first sporting events that they ever did that for, and he made a killing off of that. That's why he made so much money off of that match. Now, I have never heard, I don't know of anyone who has any tape of professional wrestling going back further than 1920. There's a Joe Stecker, Earl Caddick match, which I have seen, and in fact, I think that the tape is available at the Wrestling Museum in Newton, Iowa, which is believed to be the oldest professional wrestling match on tape, and I know I've seen some of the Strangler-Lewis matches from the 30s. I don't think I've seen anything else from the 20s. But I saw a Strangler-Lewis Dick Sheekat match from 34, which kind of boring, But I guess, you would think it would be, because, I don't know. Speaking of...
style.
Yeah. It looked like, they try to work it to look like amateur wrestling, but they still, if you watch it though, even though they try to work it like a shoot, there's no way that you could take the way that they did escapes and things like that and nip-ups as a shoot if you've ever watched any amateur wrestling in your life. Now, I don't know about the Caddick-Stecker match. I think the Caddick-Stecker match in 20 had no flaws because a lot of amateur people watch that and believe it to be a shoot. And for all I know, maybe it was. I don't know. But anyway, this is from Greg Sterner, who said, I have a very vague memory of a tape I saw when I was a kid. It was a compilation tape of Andre the Giant. In one of the segments, Andre boxed Gorilla Monsoon in a ring that was full of puddles from a rainstorm in an open stadium. At the end, Andre knocked Gorilla into a huge puddle outside the ring. Can you shed some light on this match if you remember it? And the date and location and any backstory? Well, it was in, I believe, Puerto Rico. I saw this match, and speaking of that, that match was really, really horrible. Could you imagine Gorilla Monsoon in a boxing match weighing, probably well over 400 pounds? It was just, and plus they're in the pouring rain, okay? And, so, you could imagine.
It must have been a hell of a puddle for Gorilla to take a bump into.
Yeah. I remember it. I remember that much of it because it was just, you wouldn't forget it. It was on tape. If you watch a tape, it was a whole bunch of really old Andre matches, mostly from the 70s, and most of it was really, really bad. And then there's also a tape of him doing a handicap match from the old Olympic in L.A. Well, it's still around, I guess. They refurbished it, but from the Olympic Auditorium in L.A. against Black Gordman and Goliath. And that's the only, when you watch that, Gordman and Goliath are like the only guys on the whole tape that actually hold up. If you're watching it by, I wouldn't say they would hold up today, but in the 80s when I watched it, they held up. And I was watching them going man, these guys are good workers. And everybody else that Andre was wrestling in the 70s, you're just looking at him going, God, but it doesn't matter what it looked like today because it would matter how it played then when it happened. Let me see. What do we have here? Do you feel
the Silver really does look like a young Andre the Giant?
You watched him on EMLL?
I sure did. It's like crossbreed Andre the Giant, Van Hammer, and Kevin Nash.
Van Hammer?
The talent of all three rolled into one.
Van Hammer? Where'd you get that one?
It's just about a long face.
Yeah, I guess he's got the long face. He's got a very, very weird resemblance to Andre facially to me.
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Weird.
And just that side. Now, how's it? I haven't seen him on EMLL because he wasn't on the pay-per-view. Is he passable or?
Well, he's just like a really big guy, and he gets in there for a second, and he does a spot, and he gets back out, and he's the kind of guy that looks. It's kind of like he looks athletic for being as tall as he is, but the stuff that he does doesn't necessarily look very athletic, you know what I mean? He kind of moves fast, and it's not like, you'd see Andre when he got older and he'd just stand there and move really slow. He can do something. Yeah. Very impressive, but...
But he couldn't make it in this country, could he?
Oh, no.
Okay. We're going to go ahead
to... his size.
Yeah, and the thing is, in this country, when you've got... in Mexico, he can get that because everyone's 5'7". So he can be a total giant because he's legit 7'3.5". In our country, when you've got Paul White and these other guys, he's not that much taller than people that are already here.
Mm-hmm. How about a slightly more athletic Kevin Nash with no charisma?
He's more athletic than Kevin Nash?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see Nash walking around and you think that all of a sudden his legs are just going to break out from underneath him and he'll just collapse. I didn't think about that with Silva.
Yeah. I just saw, speaking of Kevin Nash, a couple of weeks back, they had the show where Scott Hall and Kevin Nash worked with John Tenta, and Mark and Rena Mero were at it, and I got my Japanese magazine today. And by the way, the Noah rating, for those of you who were scared about Noah, their rating the second week was actually pretty damn great. The first week rating was not good at all. They were on, this would have been, not this past Friday, but the Friday the 13th. They're on it from 1:55 to 2:25 a.m. on Friday nights, and they did a 2.8, so that's not bad. I think we talked about this before, but the Fukuoka Dome is going to be airing in prime time on May the 5th, so they'll get a pretty huge audience for that, although maybe not as huge as they expect because it's a pretty weak card except for the Choshu match with Naoya Ogawa and the tag team. Let's see. I was wondering who was responsible for the WCW booking during 1996 to 1998. Was that Kevin Sullivan, Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan? Weren't they the main people? Yeah. Also, after watching Raw and SmackDown, I thought the business of wrestling is about building up your opponents and putting new people over. Little do you know.
Come on, man.
The business of wrestling is being as selfish as you can and keeping your position and not caring about the future of the business. Speaking of which, I watched, on Friday we talked about that Jun Kasai match, the one from Smyrna, it was Smyrna, Delaware, with the blood and everything, okay? I saw the match already before. On Saturday night after watching the Lennox Lewis fight, I had some friends over and we watched, I actually watched a bunch of K1 after that, but then we watched the tape of the backstage, and also we watched tape at the beginning of that tape. Actually, it's an RF videotape. They have like all these highlight bumps that have been done in Combat Zone Wrestling, and I just showed it to my friends who are not what I would call big wrestling fans, but they are pretty somewhat fans, and I mean they just shook their heads and they thought that like if wrestling goes in this direction, it's going to die, and if it does, then it will. Then it will. I mean, I don't expect it will go in that direction completely. But between that and just the Gallipol thing that came out and everything, I'm so depressed because the people who were involved in wrestling need to take stock in something, or this business is really going to be in trouble. Because if you keep feeding this perception of wrestling, that wrestling is only for lunatic fans, sponsors are going to run so far from it, and this thing cannot survive at any level without sponsors. Unless your idea of wrestling is, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
public
like it's WWF and nothing else, and and public access TV, exactly. I mean, it can have it can be some cult underground thing like, Underground Fight Club or something like that. But I mean, to be at the level for that it was in, it's going to have to reverse what it is. To the point where advertisers are going to, think that mainstream people are interested in it, which is going to be really, really hard to convince them now that they're convinced that they're not. And number two, and obviously still maintains popularity and ratings, or a decent amount of their ratings, but also, where was I going with all that, Brian?
That's a good question. Wrestling might die.
I'm not going to say that wrestling might die, but wrestling will be in a lot of trouble in 2 years if it does not put on a product that mainstream advertisers are willing to not be embarrassed to be associated with, even with big ratings. Because there is no question that Fox or USA Network today could put on a wrestling show and it would draw above average ratings. But you know what? They couldn't sell ads for it, so they don't care, and that's why they don't want it. That thing, the Gallipol thing spelled out so scary about, like, when you compare tennis or ice hockey or something, and we'll go like, God, like wrestling, look at how bad hockey's ratings or look at how bad basketball's ratings are. And you know what? It doesn't matter because advertisers love that audience because they think that they're getting an affluent middle-class audience watching, and they think when they're getting wrestling that they're not getting that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that Gallup poll reinforced it. It was the worst time possible for that thing to come out. I actually wrote a bunch about that in this week's Observer. Anyway.
I got depressed because I was reading a bunch of stuff like that over the weekend, and on Sunday night, I'm looking through all these tapes, and remember that St. Louis wrestling special that you sent me a long time ago?
Oh, with the suits and ties?
Yeah, I'd lost it. And here I am looking at these tapes, and there it is. And I popped it in, and I watched it. And, by the way, I just want to mention to all of you out there that Bob Costas did, in fact, host this television show. And I just watched it, and it was like, wow, this was really great. And,
it was really different.
Yeah.
It was really different.
Just, they're just talking about how, we get all these big stars coming in from around the country. And I'm thinking about all the territories, and there was just wrestling everywhere. And then now, today, it's like the WWF.
Okay. Let's see. What's your opinion of Bill Goldberg's contract and the rumors about Time Warner and WF contacting him about his contract? I mean, there's nothing new on it. The odds are very great against Bill Goldberg going to the WF unless they offer him like, $2 million a year or more to go. And there'd be no reason for him to go for any less than that. And the ball's in their court. It's the ball's in the WF's court. This is from Scott Gibson, who says, Elizabeth is still married.
What if he gets bought out for 50 cents on the dollar, which would be $3 million? And then they gave him $1 million a year, like they.
But then he's only breaking even going on the road 200 days a year. Why doesn't he just sit home and enjoy the money and concentrate on trying to make it in acting, which he likes more?
Yeah.
I mean, they'd have to make it worth his while, not just to break even, but to make more money. But the one thing they can
tell him is, look, you can try and get into movies on your own if you want to, or you could have our machine behind you. Look at The Rock.
Great, that's one example. But the other thing is then they own you, and they keep you from projects you may want to take. The other way, you own yourself. So there's a flip side to that too. I mean, there's no doubt that certainly for selling books and certainly for getting a name out there, if you want to get your name out there through wrestling, the WWF is very, very valuable. But if you think you can get your name out there and you don't need wrestling, it can be an albatross too, because a lot of companies may not want to deal through the WWF in being your agent, and may just want to deal with you personally or through your own agents, So anyway, from Scott Gibson, who says, Elizabeth is still married, not to Luger. I thought that she was getting divorced. Anyway, says Ken Shamrock is not with Ryan Shamrock. Little do you know. He is married to a woman named Tina. Ken Shamrock is married to...
Email us and give us the whole story, please.
Yes. Ken Shamrock, Tina Shamrock is actually one of my best friends. Let's see. And they are married. Is WOW in financial trouble? Yes. Another Elizabeth question. I was wondering if you've heard anything about Miss Elizabeth. Will she be returning to wrestling soon? If she can get a job and someone will take her and there's another company, yes, not with WWF. I would seriously doubt it. I just don't see where she would fit in. Please talk about Leviathan. JR has confirmed his unlimited potential, and Jim Cornette said he'll be a main eventer in WrestleMania in the next few years. He has a great looking build, and wonder what you've heard about him. I watch Leviathan almost every week. He's, what's funny about him is that in Ohio Valley Wrestling, they make him out to be this big monster, and he's probably 6'6", and maybe about 300 pounds. And he's got a really impressive physique in that he's got this unusually tiny waist, big thighs, huge back and shoulders, good-sized arms, kind of like a Goldberg. He doesn't look as powerful as Goldberg, but his waist is so tiny that his proportions are just phenomenal. When you look at him, it's really, and he's got great muscle definition. So, as a physical package, he's impressive as hell. As a worker, he's still learning, and, there's no... no one's fooling themselves that he's a great worker. The thing is, with Ohio Valley, they have him just basically do Monster Man spots, kind of like, No Cell and like what Undertaker does and Kane did when they first started, where they don't sell anything.
It's the whole Rhino thing with, you put him in context with all the smaller guys, yet when you bring him to the WWF, he'd be smaller than Bradshaw.
He would be smaller.
Bradshaw's this giant killer.
Yeah, what was weird is like at the last OVW show. Like when they brought the Big Show in and they did a program with Leviathan and the Big Show, and the Big Show was much, much bigger than Leviathan, but he's bigger than everyone. And the fact is Big Show sold for him and everything. Then they brought Kane in, and Kane was a lot bigger than Leviathan, and that I thought really hurt him. And then like this last show, they brought in Bull Buchanan, and Bull Buchanan was like the same size or bigger than Leviathan too. And then I started realizing, if he goes to the WWF, he's just slightly bigger than Billy Gunn, and he's got a lot better physique. But, hell, Billy Gunn's a better worker than he is. So it's like, I'm not saying that he won't make it. He's got a great, great look. He may make it really big if he turns out to be a good worker. He will make it because he's got a great look, but he can't make it as a pure monster like he's making it now. So that's what he's going to have to learn to be a complete wrestler. And even look at the Big Shows. The Big Show doesn't even make it as a monster in the WWF. I don't know.
That they would have him do those monster matches as opposed to, trying to get him to learn how to work now.
Well, they do try to get him to learn how to work. Just in the ring, he does the monster style.
Yeah.
When they're doing the training, he does the same thing everybody else does.
But you still got to do it in the ring.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. For training that monster stuff, well, maybe they think that he's going to be another Kane, and they'll put lifts in his shoes.
Yeah.
I don't know. He really does have. He's got a really genetically gifted physique. Guys that big just don't have that small a waist. And that's got nothing to do. That part, drugs can't give you a small waist. Drugs can give you a lot, but they can't give you what genetics didn't give you first.
Unless they rot your insides and you have no internal organs.
This is from Jeff Clanton, who says, please see if it's possible to get Vince McMahon to add Bruno Sammartino to the Hall of Fame. There is nothing that I can do about that. That is all going to be Vince McMahon.
Write-in campaign.
Yes, yeah. I understand there has been a misunderstanding. Listen to this. This is actually kind of funny. I understand there has been a misunderstanding between the two some years ago. How's that for an understatement? Sammartino put years and years in and gave wrestling a good name. He kind of did. Please see if you can start a drive to get this man inducted. Anyway, the thought is good. Let's see.
You know, as much as I make fun of those write-in campaigns, there have been some campaigns that actually have worked. I don't think this one will, but
no, that one.
You can try if you want.
What was it? I mean, it was a write-in.
It was a Blue Meanie one, didn't it?
Yeah, it got him his job back, but then they had no intention of doing anything with him, so they just basically, it got him one more year of income. I mean, they sent him to Memphis and then they fired him. But no, they listen. No, if there was like this giant campaign of people saying, please put Bruno in the Hall of Fame, they would have, JR or somebody ask him. Obviously if Vince asked him, he would say no, but JR asked him. JR's got a way of smoothing things over. And Bruno likes JR. But I don't know that Bruno would go to the banquet though. I would think he wouldn't. So it's a tough one. But that Hall of Fame, let's just face it, the WWF Hall of Fame, we never talk about it because it's such a joke because, how do you not have Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper, Bret Hart? None of these guys are in, and most of them will never be in, so what does it matter? And, and those are like the biggest stars they ever had.
Yeah.
This is from Benjamin, who says, if the tables were turned, what do you think might happen if WCW purchased the WWF?
Maybe after they pass away, they'll be put in. You think Vince would do that? If Hogan died?
Yes. Yes, I think he would. Okay. Yeah, or Bruno, too. I think he would then, too. Because then you would no longer have the embarrassment of this guy, not showing up to the banquet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If the tables were turned, what do you think would happen if WCW had purchased the WWF? You know that I got to tell you that I never have thought about that for 1 second in my entire life. So I don't know.
Well, let's see. If they would have purchased them in 1996, the NWO angle would have been bigger than ever, and they probably would have crashed harder than ever.
Yeah, because they still would have screwed up, and they still wouldn't have elevated guys. And that poor Rock, he would have been like, he'd be where Prince Iaukea is. And where is that anyway?
He'd be a tag team with Prince Iaukea. The Island Boys.
And he'd be going nowhere. And he would probably be, I don't know what he'd be doing. He'd probably find a way to be successful at something else, but it probably wouldn't be wrestling. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. I was listening to your show Friday about Ming taking a guy's eye out. What is it about wrestlers that go after people's eyes? Actually, there's actually an answer to that one. When you're a wrestler at that level, it's certainly in the old days, wrestlers were taught very early on that to protect the business, if you're ever in a fight, like in a bar or something, you better win the fight, and the first way to do that is to go for a guy's eye. And, I always hear that from, that's the first thing you do is you take a guy down and you go right for his eye. And so that's what it is. That's why. Were there ever any thoughts about turning Hogan heel in the WWF? I'm sure it was thought. I'm sure, there's thoughts of anything, but never serious, no. Absolutely never serious thought to that one. This is an interesting one. It's also from Jason Campbell, who actually read an email from him a little while ago. I've been interested in the pro wrestling versus not pro wrestling debate of the last few weeks, and I feel the need to comment. Let me start by saying I enjoy mixed martial arts. I'm glad they're covered in The Observer and Figure 4. I even put UFC and Pride results on my website, Wrestling Supercards and Tournament. However, they are not pro wrestling. Pro wrestling, by my definition and many others, is worked. Okay, now I totally disagree with that. I think pro wrestling is whatever is marketed under the term pro wrestling to wrestling fans is pro wrestling. If some promoter came up and started and got
Brawl for All, was that considered pro wrestling?
Well, then it would not be under those. I considered it part of pro wrestling. It was on a pro wrestling TV show, but it wasn't worked. What about?
They never differentiated it as something that was actually. They vaguely, we're talking about, Actually, I don't even know how they worded it, but they kind of tried to get the impression out there that this was not fake without actually saying those words. But, it was on a pro wrestling show, in a pro wrestling ring, with pro wrestling performers.
It was at WrestleMania.
Crowd.
Yeah. But, the same thing in Japan. There have been real matches in the history of New Japan. There have been, not a lot of them, but Ali Inoki, just as an example. Which was actually the most famous match in the history of the company. In fact, it's the most famous match in the history of Japanese wrestling, as a matter of fact. Was not a work match. Although it was supposed to be, it just didn't end up that way. Let me finish this. But anyway, if you got a promoter who, and this has been tried many times before and it's always flopped, and it'll probably be tried again at some point, and they started an organization where they took guys like Cael Sanderson or whatever, and they promoted professional wrestling. These guys are wrestlers; they're paid to wrestle, and and they did not predetermine the matches, and they did freestyle rules, and if they actually were marketable and could make money at it, why would that not be professional wrestling? I mean, I couldn't even you couldn't give me a reason why it wouldn't be. Now, and quite frankly, it would probably be more successful than WOW, or some of the groups that have done pro wrestling, but it wouldn't be, but they would fail just as quickly as, all those other groups. But, because they're real, they're not pro wrestling. I mean, it's, like we talked about with Brawl for All, there've been, then Gotch and Hackenschmidt weren't pro wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, let me finish this because this is a good letter.
I can understand the thought process. In fact, I think a better argument for those people would be a real fight in a promotion that does primarily worked matches would still be considered pro wrestling.
Well, what if you're split? What about Rings? Although Rings is now... Rings isn't split anymore, but Rings for years was Rings would do 6-match shows, and they'd have 3 worked matches and 3 shoot matches. So what were they? And they weren't, they were in the wrestling magazines. They were, I consider them pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, however, I think the name of your show, people take the name of your show and newsletter and the name of the newsletters to literally. The overwhelmingly majority of the coverage is pro wrestling, hence the name. Do the same people complain when USA Today covers international news? So what is pro wrestling? I suppose some pride matches would qualify. Well, certainly Fujita and Takayama. How could it not be?
Mm-hmm.
It's 2 pro wrestlers. The number 1 contender for the GHC title against the IWGP title, right? How could it not be pro wrestling? Most likely in a work match, although we won't know until it's over. So do old shoot-style promotions, UWF Rings. Lucha's pro wrestling, UFC is not, UWFI is. Pride matches, most Pride matches are not. K1 isn't even close. Now, K1 is not pro wrestling, but it is sports entertainment. Many years ago, in a Supreme Court definition, a justice says, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it in regard to pornography. That's the best answer I can give about pro wrestling. We'll start with phone calls right now. We're going to start with Dan. Dan, what's going on? Hello.
Dan does not appear to be there.
Dan is not there. Is Zag there? Zag?
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, who's this?
This is Zach.
Okay.
Zach. Well, that's close enough.
Yeah.
What's going on, Zach?
Not much. I've got a couple of stupid questions for you. First of all, the talk of Inoki versus Baba as far as who was more respected and who was more loved last week got me wondering. Did Baba ever wrestle under the Great Zebra Mask?
I don't think so, but the zebra guy was supposed to be Baba.
Right, I know, and that's why I was asking.
I don't know that he ever wrestled under this as the giant zebra.
Okay.
Whenever the giant zebra wrestled, as far as I know, it was always Shinji Takano.
Ah. Because I knew that the Tiger Mask comic and television show had ended by the time Misawa was Tiger Mask.
Oh, years, even by the time Sayama was, I think.
Ah. And also, oh shoot, what was it? I had another question. Let me think just a moment.
It was stupid.
Yes, it was. Although not as stupid as some of them. Just close.
We don't get many stupid questions on this show.
Oh, come on.
He was being sarcastic.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
God, I had another one. Now I remember what it was. What's Tanaka up to? Masato Tanaka.
Masato Tanaka is going to be the top guy when Atsushi Onita starts his new company in July, and he's been working various independent shows in Japan. I think he just worked for IWA Japan in the last few years. I think it was IWA. Wait, I just one of the independent groups he worked. He worked him, Geto, and Jado just worked for.
Just for whoever, since FMW. That has to be the dumbest move that FMW has made any time since deciding to be the WWF.
Well, all of their moves since deciding to be the WWF have been like dumb. I mean, like the thing is,
same with every company.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think in their mind they decided they wanted to be like WWF, but the truth is that they were really more like WCW because they did a whole bunch of stipulation matches they never adhered to. WWF has great in-ring wrestling. They forgot their in-ring wrestling and concentrated on these, stupid gimmicks. I mean, and stupid storylines. I mean,
my favorite is still Koto Fuyuki threatening to blow up Ricky Fuji. They had.
I mean, to me, it's like all these things where loser has to get married and divorced and things like that, and it's like, come on. Yeah.
Now I remember what the other question was. It was in relation to you're saying that they had never even considered the notion of Hulk Hogan turning heel What was the deal with the Orndorff angle then? Because watching it now, everything they did looks like it was testing the waters for a heel turn that the fans wouldn't buy.
No, they were definitely supposed to be turning Orndorff heel. I mean, I know that was the plan. By 85, believe me, they were building that whole thing around Hogan as a babyface. The thought of going heel with Hogan, I mean, in 85, 86, this was 86 actually, right? Was it? No, August of 85, it'd have been 85, end of 85. But anyway,
hell of a funny way of doing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know the build-up and everything like that, but actually I remember when that happened, we used to joke about, like, that, in some ways Orndorff was justified, but you know what, they used to do that in the old days, is actually give the heels certain justification anyway, but ultimately what would piss the fans off is that, they would start acting like babies and things like that over it, and he would align himself with the heels. So, like, at the beginning, you didn't know which one you were siding with, and then the guy did the big move and just goes, well, screw him, the other guy was the one who was right, rather than just, like, quick break.
Yeah. I mean, all I've seen is the big matches, stuff that made it onto video, like the big event, and a couple of the sketches, and it always looked like Hogan was being an ass.
Well, he always was.
His whole career.
Yeah, that's true. All right, gentlemen, love your show. You guys have a good day.
Okay, let's go to George. George, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Dave? How you doing?
Doing pretty good.
I was just wondering about the whole Undertaker and Kane thing. That I was wondering how.
Don't ask us to explain the storyline from the beginning. That's the hardest one of all.
Yeah.
Remember when Kane chokeslammed Undertaker on his mother's bones?
Yeah, and then later we found out that Undertaker was the one who burned everything down and blamed it on Kane.
Kane. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long does the Undertaker actually have on his contract? I mean, I know that Jericho and Benoit, I guess it's less of an Undertaker and Kane question versus a why. Well, I understand why, but how long will it take, or will it ever happen for Jericho and Benoit to be put in that spot? Because it's obvious. It's obvious who's supposed to be there. But
well, do you want to know the straight answer is? Whenever business goes down enough to where Vince McMahon realizes he has to make a change, he will then make the change. Until he sees that, he will probably make the change too late as opposed to too early. Because if he was going to do it too early, he'd already done it. Yeah. So it'll be too late, but when the business starts going down, he'll realize. And unfortunately, when ratings are low, is a much harder time to create a new star than ratings are high.
When did they ever really change direction, though, when things are starting to go down? Or before they start to go down?
Yeah, I guess that's...
Well, his change of direction before things went down was to turn Austin heel, as opposed to elevate a new guy.
And that's another question I wanted to ask. I am a very big Triple H fan, and as far as Austin went, other than his ring work, I mean, I liked his character and his ring work and things like that, but I don't understand why it seems like on Raw, I think another caller said this to you earlier last week or something, it looked like Triple H was pushing Austin around. I mean, it looked like
Austin was his lackey.
Yeah.
It wasn't that interesting.
And
wasn't it interesting that like at the end of was it SmackDown when they played Triple H's music and not Austin's music?
Mm-hmm.
They probably did that so the fans wouldn't share.
I'm trying to remember. I think SmackDown at the end they did play Austin's music, but like at the beginning of the show, the beatdown, they played Hunter's.
Okay.
So the fans would know to boo instead of the cheer, you think? So they
No. I think that there's a lot of subtle things that are going on that we will have to watch for the next couple of months. I mean, ultimately, I guess it really doesn't matter because Triple H is going to be the babyface and Austin's going to be the heel, and they are going to feud with each other. So it doesn't matter like who sort of is presented as the leader because the ultimate thing is they're going and that's where they're going to end up anyway.
Do you think that degrades your world title though? If your world champion's taking orders from somebody?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it degrades your world title when it's put up in a tag team match, too, but they're doing it.
Yeah, you're right. Well, thanks a lot for answering my question, guys. You guys have a great show, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Tony. Tony, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. Hey, Brian. My
Hey.
computer sucks. I don't listen to the show often, but I'm a long-time Observer reader. I just wanted to talk a little nostalgia about Ric Flair.
Okay.
Some of my favorite stuff to watch on tape are highlights of his stops in different territories in the 80s, and I was wondering if you guys had a favorite match angle or memory from that Flair era. I think my favorite was the DiBiase turn in Mid-South back in '85.
That was awesome. I mean, I would say maybe the Christmas 1982 match at Dallas Reunion Arena with Flair and Kerry in the cage match where the Freebirds turned heel.
Oh, yeah, with
that
Michael
just
Hayes, the referee, I think.
Yeah, that lit the territory on fire. That was an unbelievable piece of. I mean, think about one match going from like every Friday night they went from drawing say 1,500 people to drawing 4,000 people for like 2 years, literally based on the finish of one match. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, I guess WWF sort of did that with Survivor Series. So those would be the two. But
well, the thing about it is, Flair's great, but the thing he did with some of the stuff when he came into territories was he set up another heel and a face, like that Von Erich Freebird thing and the Ted DiBiase face turn. I mean, think about all the heat Ted DiBiase you've been getting there. For him to be the top face after that, it's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I used to love his stuff when he would wrestle Barry Windham in Florida.
It
didn't even matter the program, just the match. The match quality itself was just unbelievable.
And then later in '87, they had some great matches.
In the Carolina territory.
Right.
Yeah, the TV match from Fayetteville. I mean, I still remember that when they did the 1 hour. That 1 hour, the 1 hour worldwide show where it's just the whole show is the Flair Barry Windham match and it goes to a draw. Yeah. I mean, what an incredible television show. I don't know why. I don't know why people don't do that now because, I'm sorry, but, the last time that we had a long match on television, which I guess would be Benoit and Bret Hart, the rating grew minute by minute all the way through. I mean, it did not do a good rating, but the company was doing a horrible rating at the time. But, I mean, and when they've done long matches, I mean, I remember Jim Herd, when he was running the company, was like, nobody wants to see anyone, even the people they like, more than 20 minutes. And you know what? Most times you're right. However, when Flair and Sting did the 45-minute match, they ended up at the end having the biggest audience that company ever had up to that point in history and the highest rating.
And it made Sting's career forever.
And it made Sting's career forever. And that's the other thing. It's like it became a match that because it went so long, it had so much impact. That's right. So to do a long match every now and then, as opposed to this, the style of TV they do. I mean, I think doing something different every now and then would probably, benefit because you'll remember it, and people aren't going to turn off a great match like that. I don't think.
Yeah,
and maybe
why
they
even
will.
worry about it now? I can imagine. I can believe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, the concern was, if this thing goes past a certain amount of time, everyone's just going to turn to the other show and see what's on over there. Nothing to worry about now. There's only one show.
Well, I guess times have changed.
And if you got two guys that are over, going for 30 minutes or whatever, or even an hour, they'll stay for the whole show.
Well, I mean, the pay-per-view matches have been, you get some really great long matches on pay-per-view. I guess the thinking now is if you use the soap opera to set up a great match.
Yeah, but did anyone ever complain after that 45-minute match that Austin and Triple H had the 3-fall match a couple of months ago? That thing was too long? I mean, nobody, or even, we were scared to death when Rock and Triple H did the 60 going in, but you know what? The crowd was with that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, another thing I wanted to ask
watch Benoit and Angle prove us wrong,
No, they won't. Not those.
I hope not. I sure hope they don't.
Another thing I wanted to ask you was I think a lot of us would rather, remember Flair as the wrestling symbol for the 80s than Hogan, but I was thinking about something interesting. What do you think Flair's career winning percentage is? I mean,
it's very low. He always lost.
It's got to be real low.
Yeah, Ric Flair and Terry Funk, I mean, those guys never won matches.
Oh, no.
Unless they were in Japan, then they would win. But, in this country, they never won.
But it's amazing that somebody could generate that amount of heat over all these years. And Ric Flair, 15-20% of his matches over the years you think he's won? I mean, Hogan's won 90-something.
Well, it depends on it depends on when he was babyface. Because when he was babyface, he probably won a lot.
Yeah.
But, he probably won 25%. I don't know.
I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, someone's going to do like they have Bruno's record book, and I mean in Bruno.
I think they do have the Ric Flair record book.
Oh yeah, they do. See what he has actually. Yeah, I actually could look it up. It was up to date through the mid to late 90s anyway. Yeah, I could actually look it up. But yeah, the Bruno record book. I mean, Bruno that guy never lost. You know what I mean? But Rick lost a lot. But when Rick was champion, it was usually on a DQ.
Well, yeah. But then a lot of times there would be non-title matches, like I was talking about before, he'd come into a territory and he'd do the job to Butch Reed or something to set up another big match where he might lose by a DQ or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he did a lot of non-title jobs too.
A decent amount. Not at the arenas though. I mean, he would do that on TV, but at the arenas he didn't do that many non-titles.
Right.
Yeah.
And one other thing, what are your guys' favorite promotions ever to watch on tape? Like, if you could watch anything right now, what would it be?
Right now?
WWF right now, but...
Yeah.
Well, that's because it's new, but anything
I really like
ever-
WWF, and I even really like the EMLL and the AAA minis. Those minis are awesome.
Yeah, they are. WWF in 1997, even though it wasn't that popular and the work rate wasn't close to what it is now, I thought the storylines were incredible.
Oh, I love it then, too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember those TVs so fondly. And if you watch, like, Wrestling with Shadows, I mean, it just drives the point in your head, like, wow, they really had good storylines that year. For the main event,
Really?
I've seen the Bret Hart-Austin thing.
Oh, yeah, the Bret Hart stuff was great. I think my favorite stuff is, I'm a big Southern guy. I love 80s Memphis, 80s Mid-South.
Oh, yeah, I love that stuff, too. Yeah, the Mid-South around 1984, 85
The
was
Last
really
Stampede.
good. The Last Stampede, that was like the peak of the company pretty much, was The Last Stampede.
Right.
I always liked the Memphis for the interviews more than the work rate, although sometimes the work was really good too. But the Memphis television show was very much actually the forerunner to Raw, really, if you think about it. You know, short matches and lots of talking.
Right.
You know, I loved the Carolinas when it was really hot, you know, when the Rock and Roll Express was there, like the first time. And, you know, Dusty and Flair and Magnum TA, Arn and Tully, that was a really great period. New Japan Pro Wrestling in the early 80s was so light years ahead of everybody else as far as product. And then New Japan had, you know, many other periods that were really, really good. Mid-90s was really good. All Japan main events during the 90s, I mean, my God, those are the best matches in the history of wrestling, yeah. Yeah, so, you know, that would be some of the stuff.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, guys.
It's from Terry Blackburn. Brian, you're going to have to answer this one because I want to watch the steam come out of your ears as I read this.
Oh, no.
What does Vince McMahon see in William Regal? He doesn't get any heat. It's almost like a morgue when he comes to the ring. He has maybe 5 moves in his repertoire, an awful-looking physique, and this, most importantly, poor mic skills. Hell, Benoit has forgotten more moves than Regal knows. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't a lack of reaction from the crowd impair a wrestler's chance of getting a push? Then again, X-Pac's been in the same situation for 18 months, and he's still around.
I have no comment.
Okay. This
That
is
couldn't
from
even be a
Andrew.
serious email anyway.
I know. This is from Andrew
Sometimes
McMahon.
you get emails and it's like, how could someone really even think this?
Yes. Well, the
There's no
truth
way.
is that when Regal first came in, he did not get great crowd reactions to his wrestling. In fact, the
That's
crowd was
true.
really quiet, and they did push him, unlike Taz, who got great crowd reactions when he first showed up, and they didn't push him. But that was because Austin wanted to work with him, and then once he got to where he is, he ended up being like an incredibly great performer in the role. As far as his interviews, I mean, I personally think he's the best actor in all of wrestling on the television shows. I think everyone else looks like they were bad actors. I don't know, he just cracks me up. This is from Andrew McMahon. It goes, I know you're probably getting sick of hearing about this, but Fire Pro D, which is a video game, has kept me happy for days. I've been doing classic half-hour matches with Miss Kawada and Misawa, and had a legend battle royal where Ric Flair was eliminating everybody left and right. Oh, you can have so many great classics on this game. I've always been a fan of the Von Erichs. Your comment about Kevin Von Erich last week has me confused. Can you explain why you feel he's a waste of time? It's just a hunch. It sounds like you had a personal problem. I have no personal problem with I don't know if I have a personal problem with anyone in wrestling. There are people who think they're in wrestling that I may have a personal problem with, but they're not. But, and I don't really have personal problems with them either. But, I just think that it would be, what can I say? I mean, it's like I don't want to do a show in Fantasyland.
The fact that we're dancing around the answer to this question should answer the question for you.
I'm not dancing around it. I don't want to do a show with someone in Fantasyland. I know we've done them before, but I try to avoid them at all costs. When I know going in it's going to be, why do it? Is that a good answer?
That's pretty good.
Okay, this is from Dan in Iowa.
It was a good
who
answer
goes,
the first time you said it, but a lot of people didn't get it.
Okay. I plan on rebelling. The only way that Vince is going to understand what's happening on TV is to not buy the pay-per-view. Just because there's no competition, he needs to still have a good product. You know, the problem is that if the pay-per-view buy rate is down, everyone's just going to say, well, it was 4 weeks since WrestleMania. No one will attribute it to what it is. That's the truth. Even though last year, 4 weeks after...
The whole thing is this, too. I mean, you can do your write-in campaigns because your voice actually will be heard. But if there's a pay-per-view that's going to do 640,000 buys, and you think that your one buy is going to mean anything, it's not.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, just because...
I mean, it may feel good inside that you rebelled and didn't buy Vince's pay-per-view. It's like my friend Brent does this all the time. He goes, I hate Vince McMahon. I think he's a devil. I will never buy his pay-per-views. And I just think to myself, okay, great. You're the one not getting the pay-per-view. It's not affecting him in the slightest. It's not hurting his buy rate.
Well, no, it takes, $15 out of his, billion-dollar, billion-dollar net worth. Yeah, I know. Like
this is $15 poorer today.
Yeah, he can afford it. It goes, also, from what I saw at the 2000 NCAA championships in St. Louis, if Brock Lesnar can work a lick, he's the real deal. Oh, he's the real deal, all right. At the championships, he played a tremendous heel in front of us Iowa fans, and he was a total face in front of the Minnesota fans. Kale Sanderson may be the best wrestler, but Brock owned the place. He's got a ways to go, though, but he's the real deal. Let's see. What's really beginning to worry me about the WWF is they seem to be under the impression they don't have to think about their future. Unless you're Austin, Rock, Triple H, or Undertaker, it seems that anyone who starts to catch fire suddenly gets their wings clipped. Sure, Kurt Angle managed to get to the top tier, but it's clear he's been yanked from the main events and been brought back to the mid-card. There seems to be an attitude that when the time comes, they can instantly create a star that the people will automatically accept as a main eventer, so there's no need to plan ahead and build and begin laying the foundation today. This is a very arrogant and very dangerous attitude that I unfortunately suspect may come back to haunt them in the very near future. Don't think that there are not people in that company who are aware of this. It's a very political game going on there, and sooner or later, something's got to give. This is from Chad, who goes, how did you rate the 6-man Japanese tag team match from the barely legal pay-per-view? I don't know, 4.5, 4 3/4? Remember that match?
Mm-hmm.
With the Michinoku guys?
That was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. Who is the best non-Japanese, non-Mexican junior heavyweight in the world? Who'd you say? Kidman?
Non-Japanese, non-Mexican?
Eddie Guerrero. If we consider Eddie Guerrero Mexican and Rey Mysterio Mexican, even though they're both kind of American.
Yeah. You consider Benoit junior heavyweight?
Probably not anymore. He's right on the border. I would say no. Billy Kidman, Shane Helms.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Trying to think who else. I don't know. So we'll get a lot of answers to this one soon. Let's see. I can see the main event being titles versus titles in order to draw some interest, but do you think it's wise to consolidate all the major belts in one place? I just don't like the world title. I don't mind the Intercontinental because no one takes it seriously anyway, but I don't like the world title being put up in a tag match the month after WrestleMania, especially because they've put so much, prestige into that belt. Austin and Rock on the biggest show fought for it, and now you're putting it up in some tag match. I wouldn't.
Especially, and the other thing is that the other titles are on the line. I mean, look at how many times those tag titles have changed hands. It was like they did it 2 times on one show before Mania. Intercontinental title changes hands all the time. I mean, those belts, all of them mean nothing except the world title. And, that's the one that's also being put up for grabs in that match. Why do it?
Yeah. How old is Trish? What about 26?
I think so.
I may have it upstairs.
Maybe a little bit younger.
I can check. I'll check during the break, maybe. Let me bring this one here. How did Inoki's legend start? Wow, where do we start on this one?
In Brazil, at a very young age.
Throwing the shot put, yeah. But in the 60s, when wrestling, in the late 60s, I guess would probably be where it really shot up. Wrestling in Japan was huge on primetime television, and the 2 big stars were Inoki and Baba, and actually 2 different networks covered the wrestling in the late 60s. And one network would put Inoki in the main event, and one network would put Baba in the main event. I think one was Friday night, one was Saturday night. So, they were both like, superstars. Kind of like if you had a deal where you had Raw and SmackDown, but but Rock only appeared on SmackDown and Austin only appeared on Raw. So that's kind of like where they start from a wrestling standpoint. And then when Inoki started his own company in the 70s, where the thing really grew was when he started fighting the guys that weren't pro wrestlers, like Muhammad Ali and Willem Ruska, the judo guy, and that era. And then after a while, he just became such a cultural icon, and he's been in the public eye for so many years that he's like, Bob Hope or, somebody, you know what I mean? Just some guy, I don't know who, Bob Hope, Arnold Palmer, I don't know. Someone who's just been around forever that everyone knows that's like bigger than the current stars in their own sport. Although Arnold Palmer's not bigger than Tiger Woods, but, except for Tiger Woods, he's probably gets more money in endorsements than almost anyone, right?
I think of who you could even compare him to.
I don't know. Arnold Palmer actually is not bad. Although Arnold Palmer never won senator. I don't know. Anyway, if Onita in his prime fought Triple H, hey, it'd still stink, but that's another story. No, actually, Triple H might be able to carry him. How much plunder would be used? Quite a bit. Do you think FMW can survive with complete players leaving and Fuyuki's terrible booking? I don't know. It's horrible. Why doesn't the WWF hire Steve Corino? I can answer that. They don't like his physique. He's got heat with Paul E. Those are two reasons. A lot of people say he's a bad worker, and I'll agree he was a bad worker compared to most of the ECW guys, but he's tall and he's good on the mic. Yeah, he's good on the mic. I don't think he's a bad worker at all. I think he's a good worker with The Rock. He's not, but even if he was, there's so many intangibles that you can't compare him to The Rock.
Yes.
And he can do a comparable promo. You know, even if he did a better promo than The Rock, the fact is The Rock has so much presence that it really doesn't matter. All his old school
I kind of thought that a lot of Corino's promos were overrated.
Really?
I just thought it was just like the monotone got me.
Okay. I liked his promos. So, when is Tajiri going to start? Don't know.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah. Why'd you protect
all
the
you
identity?
people that are waiting for Ray Jr. and all these guys to get started, just wait. Just wait.
Yeah. Why'd you protect the identities of wrestlers who use steroids? Because I don't see them use the steroids, and there's no point in being wrong. Although, we all got the same set of eyes, pretty much. Except when Brian got the new glasses, and then you could see, oh my God, they're really on steroids, huh?
They're really big.
Yeah, these guys got really big. Let's go to Greg. Greg, what's going on?
How's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Good. Listen, I saw the Raw after WrestleMania. Ironically, I don't get the national network at school here, so I have to watch it on the internet. And they showed when Austin first showed up with Vince McMahon, and how when Austin was saying, "Who wants to see me stomp Vince McMahon's ass? Give me a hell yeah." And I also saw the part where he goes, "Well, it's not going to happen tonight." Now, what I'm thinking is, instead of, I know how everyone has like the version of like an Austin Triple H feud with Triple H as the face, but I'm thinking maybe they're trying to swerve the public and they're saying that Austin's going to be the face in this one, maybe, because like I heard how you said before, always look for subtleties.
Mm-hmm.
And
they may do that just because the feeling might be that, maybe Austin's not selling as much merchandise. I mean, they can change their plan, but the plan was definitely for Triple H to go heel. I mean, to go babyface on Austin. I mean, that was the plan.
I mean, the whole thing is they wouldn't have tried so damn hard doing everything that they have been doing to get Austin over as a heel,
but do you
only
think
to make it a
that's just
swerve at the
people,
end.
Though?
Unless it was Vince.
No. I could tell you it's not a swerve because I kind of know what's going on there right now.
Okay.
But the fact that they may end up doing, they may sit, Vince McMahon may come into a meeting, today at TV and just go, you know what, TV ratings are down, our merchandise sales are down, which by the way they're not, but I'm just saying like he may just go, you know what, there's something missing.
Let's make Austin the face again.
Let's make Austin the face again. We'll just have him beat me up and go on our merry way. Yeah, I mean, like the whole reason I think that Austin is a heel is ultimately because they want to do Austin and The Rock again next year at WrestleMania, and that's just the way to do it in their minds. But they may, between now and a year from now, so many things are going to happen, and I don't know. Has there ever been a year where they've had a WrestleMania match and they've actually gone through with it for the whole year? I mean, like I'm not talking about Hogan and Andre. I think this year actually probably was as close as they came.
What about Hogan and Savage?
Hogan and Savage, yeah, that's right. They had a whole year on that one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But most of the time they would have a WrestleMania match and change it like 4 times, during the course of the year.
Right. My other question is, I remember when I guess it was like about 97, 98. I think it was at the In Your House, and I think it was the Canadian Stampede where they had Taka Michinoku first come out.
Yeah.
Now after that, like how they made him like how they were. I think, like, at first, he had, like, a monster push because everyone was loving him. They had all these segments with him and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, when he joined Kaientai, even after that, he was just buried. Why did they do that? I mean, he was so over it.
I think the thing was that Vince just saw the success of, like, the WCW Cruiserweight division, and everybody loved the matches, and he thought to himself, I am going to make my own division like this, and he gave it the big push that he always does at the beginning, and then just one week he morphed back into Vince McMahon and just thought, what the hell am I doing with these cruiserweights? They don't draw, nobody cares, and it was just dead.
Right, but the people though, like how I mean, like he couldn't take the reaction into account because I went to a couple of Raws when he was there and he wrestled like I think it was like Shotgun or whatever, but still like everyone was popping for him like crazy.
I think you just saw them as like small guys, and it was like, you know, these guys
you gotta
never
remember,
really drawn in the past. I got these big guys on top. I need to put my focus on them. You know, why make a big deal out of this?
Yeah.
You got to remember, like Vince is like 6'2", 6'2.5", and he's probably 245 pounds.
That guy is jacked. I gotta say, he's huge.
Well, yeah, he is. No, he's huge. He's a huge man, and when he sees a guy that comes up to his navel, like he laughs.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah, it's
Bischoff,
like I
you
can
know,
beat this guy up.
yeah, Bischoff was the same way. I'll tell you, even though Bischoff wasn't a big guy, Bischoff was a kickboxer. And I mean, there was something in the mind of Bischoff and in the mind of Vince, and they're thinking like, I could take this guy, and they will never, if they have that in their mind, that I could kick this guy's ass, you know, they will never push that guy past a certain level. I mean, that's the reality of it, and that's why Vince has always pushed big guys. And I mean, I think that's the thing. It's like with Vern Gagne and African Americans. You know, I remember, you know, the story we told once on the show. Tony Atlas came in to work for Vern Gagne. And he got this incredible pop. This is when Tony Atlas was actually, you know, still a big star.
Right.
And while he got this incredible pop, Vern went to someone next to him and goes, yeah, it's just too bad. You know, here in Minnesota, you know, the fans just won't get behind an African American. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter what they hear. Their minds have already made the, you know, made the answer.
Yeah, and once they've got that idea in their mind, that's the way they're going to book.
And especially whenever things get tight, you know, it's like when business gets bad. You know, it's like that year, you know, when Vince's business was at rock bottom. You know, instead of, you know, the panic move was to go to Undertaker and Sid rather than Brett and Shawn as your top program for WrestleMania, because he panicked and he figured, you know, business is bad. I got this. The small guy stuff doesn't work. I got to go with the big guy rather than like the promotion was behind the times and we got to change the promotion style, which they did eventually do, but.
It doesn't
you know,
really have to be like that, though. All they got to do is just throw like everything. I mean, whatever they sell, the public will buy. For the most part.
I think the whole thing is part of the problem is that the promoters are back there with these guys, and like you know, Dave was talking about earlier, Vince sees these guys in real life and what their real size is, whereas on TV it's like a total illusion.
But they
I mean, if I were backstage
that,
and I looked up at Big Show, like I'd have to look straight up. I'd go, my God, this guy, let's make him the world champion. He's enormous.
Yeah.
But then you watch him on TV, and if you only watch him on TV, it's just, here's this big, fat guy that's not very good. Why the hell is this guy getting a push?
Yeah, well, he sucks, basically. But anyways. But one other question I have is, what happened to Del Wilkes?
Tore his tricep so many times that pretty much had to get out of wrestling. Although I think he does into indies every now and then, or very rarely.
Because the last
The
time
real guy, or...
Yeah, the real Del Wilkes.
Page.
I mean, I know Del Wilkes wanted to write a book, but I haven't heard anything about that in months. I know he wanted to write a book about his life in wrestling. He was arrested He was arrested a couple of times, or at least once that I know of, maybe twice.
Because the last time I saw him was when Rick Rude threw the coffee in his face, and that was the last you ever saw of him.
Yeah.
One other question I have really fast is, in your opinion, do you think Chris Jericho is being buried?
Buried is not the word, but being manipulated into mid card. Yes.
Okay. Do you think he'll ever come out of that and be a main eventer?
It depends on the power of people on the booking committee and what their minds are, and since there's so many different people on the booking committee now, it just depends on who gets their way on which day.
But how did Triple H get so much power? I don't understand that.
He's a really, really smart guy, and he's got Vince's ear, and he's has a lot of, he's a student of the game. He lives it 24 hours a day. He's very, very dedicated.
Well, Austin doesn't have as much as him, or?
Austin's got a lot of pull too, but Austin doesn't exert it in the same way.
He
Austin
wouldn't
kind of
necessarily use it, just like Rock.
Right.
Yeah, like Rock. But I mean, Austin kind of just cares about his own program. Triple H overviews the whole thing.
Yeah.
You whisper in Vince's ear enough times, and got to remember, Jericho's probably only 5'9" also, and Vince is like 6'2", and it's easy to convince him that hey, he's got everything to size, and
So why did he lay down for him that one time on Raw when he won the title and he got stripped?
It was a fast count, and he won it back immediately after.
It was to further Triple H's feud and to set up the Earl Hebner thing for the main event on the pay-per-view when Earl Hebner screwed Triple H out of the title, right?
So that wasn't just a test for him to see what kind of a pop he'd get?
Well, if it was, Jericho got an incredible pop.
Yeah, Jericho
so
world
he should have passed
right
that test. I would say he passed the test then.
Yeah, that's true, too. All right, Dave. Well, hey, thanks for taking my call. Good talking to you. See you guys later.
Okay, let's go to David. David, what's going on? Hello.
Okay, hey. Got a couple questions. First, Dave, have you ever considered writing a book about the Von Erichs?
Not just about the Von Erichs, no. It's too,
How about Kevin?
There have been so many people who've wanted to do movies, and I guess you have to get Kevin's, approval or permission, and that's where they always fall apart because, Kevin, the only movie that Kevin would ever approve of would be saying that, like, there was just a series of random freak accidents as opposed to like four of your brothers died, in a short period of time, and they just happened to, it's just some weird 1,000,000,000 coincidence as opposed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, well, it could be written based on what is public knowledge.
Yeah. Somebody did a screenplay that never went anywhere that sent it to me to read, which was based on, it was kind of a cross between, it was really based on the Von Erich family, but there were some elements of other wrestling families thrown in there as well, but it was really a Von Erich family thing, and it was an incredible screenplay, and I knew it would never go anywhere because you'd almost have to be a wrestling fan and know the Von Erichs, the history of the Von Erichs, or else you'd think this thing is so ridiculously far-fetched that you couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe a father could actually be like this in real life.
I'd love to read that. Do you still have that laying around or anything?
I don't know where it is, but it was the guy who did it was one of the readers of the Observer, and what a job he did, and it never went anywhere, and it was like, it was just too bad, it was too wrestling oriented and too 70s wrestling, it had to be done in kind of like a regional, small territory to make, as a setting to make it work, and I think that people in Hollywood just don't get that.
Okay. Next question. I was looking through some old All Japan results. There was a guy named The V. I think he was an American.
I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
The V?
The V. Yeah, I know.
Remember.
It doesn't make any sense to me either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a Von Erich.
No, I don't think so.
My big question is, why is it that throughout the 80s that the general smart fan community didn't really, I don't know, they weren't really high on Jumbo Tsuruda's work, that it didn't really take till the beginning of the 90s that people started seeing how great a worker he was?
Because he got really late. He got really lazy in the mid-'80s. In the 70s, Jumbo Tsuruda was phenomenal. And he was still very good through, he was always very good, don't get me wrong, but there was a period when Riki Choshu jumped over, so this is like 1980, end of 84.
Yeah.
During that Choshu period, the work rate of All Japan, they did this kind of slow big man style, very technically good. And then Choshu and Hamaguchi and Yatsu came in there, and, Kobayashi and these guys, and they just sped up the work rate. So Tenryu sped up, but Jumbo was so used to just kind of doing things at his own pace that not that he was ever bad and he was good, but Tenryu and those guys, they just surpassed him for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, one day Jumbo woke up and just goes, hey, you know what? Someone must have told him they're surpassing him, and since he was such a good athlete, he picked it up and ended up being better than any of them. But that's the real reason. He just kind of got caught behind the times for about a 2-year period there, or a 3-year period.
Yeah, but even his better work just seemed to go unrecognized. Like Jeff Bowdrin's best matches of the 80s list doesn't really represent him well.
Really? Okay. Well, his matches with Tenryu were incredible.
Yeah.
I remember when Jumbo died, they did that special on TV, and they showed a bunch of his matches, and the 70s stuff doesn't necessarily hold up, although it was better than anybody else in the 70s, except for a few handful of people.
Weird. I actually like Jumbo 70s stuff. I think I like watching it better than any of his other work.
Well, during its time period, he was so ahead of his time because nobody was doing the suplexes like he was. But when they showed one of his 89 matches with Tenryu, so in this match, I'm watching this going like, this is a better match than any match I've seen this whole year. It was just so good, and so many different moves and near falls, and the people bought it. Tsuruda and Tenryu had a great series of bouts.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that's about it.
Okay, David.
Just on a related note.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that the Funks trained, like they trained Jumbo in that era?
Bob Backlund, Stan Hansen, and Jumbo were all trained together.
Backlund wasn't as good as the other two, though.
No. Although he ended up being pretty successful, too, but no, he wasn't.
He was successful.
Wasn't the caliber of those two, no. Anyway, you mentioned last week that China doesn't have the political clout she once had. Is that due to her actions behind the scenes or comments she's made on camera, or because she no longer dates Triple H? The latter, because she no longer dates Triple H. Let's see. With a pretty full WF roster, obviously there must be some reliable veterans available that are not too pricey. Speculating, who do you think they would want to bring in as a familiar face? Whoever they want. I mean, as far as outside guys, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure what that.
Who's out there?
Yeah, I mean, who's out there? The guys who they would be bringing in would be guys from Memphis and Ohio Valley that they're training. As far as new guys, I don't think they're going to be looking for. If they liked outside guys, they'd already be under contract.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about Shima's knee injury and how serious it is? No, I have not heard any more about that. Just I know that that happened. Could you please explain to me what happened during the Muhammad Ali Antonio Inoki match when this took place? If in fact it did. It did. It was June 25th, 1976, and they were supposed to do a match. A pro wrestling match, and Antonio Inoki was supposed to win with the Enziguri. After he was all bloodied up, they had a finish worked out, and then Ali came to Japan and decided.
How did they even agree to that in the first place?
I don't know, because Ali was going to get $6 million. Well, here's the story that they were going with. Okay, they had a finish to pacify the Americans. What it would be was that Ali would be punching Inoki, and Inoki would blade. He'd be bleeding all over the place, and he'd be pounding him and pounding him. And Ali, one of the things that he was known for in boxing in that period was oftentimes when he was ready to knock a guy out, he would tell the referee, stop the fight. I don't want, the guy's like, the guy would be finished. He would tell the referee to stop the fight rather than give him those last couple punches. He was actually like very, for a boxer, he didn't want to kill the guy, you know what I mean? Or hurt the guy bad. So Ali, he'd step back, tell the ref the guy's done, and the referee would wave it off. Ali won a lot of fights that way. So the idea was he would do the same thing to Inoki. The referee, he'd go step back, tell the referee he's done. The referee wouldn't call for the bell because it'd be a Japanese referee. Actually, I take that back because it was Gene LaBelle. But anyway, Gene LaBelle was the ref. But anyway, the thing is that the referee wouldn't stop it because it was a wrestling referee, Gene LaBelle. And then Inoki would kind of get up and give him the enziguri from behind and pin him. So to the Japanese, hey, it's a clean win. That's how Inoki used to take the punishment the whole match, come back with the enziguri and win. So it's typical pro wrestling finish. And for the boxing fans and the Americans who didn't know Inoki, it was like Ali had him beat and the dirty Jap attacked him from behind with some, karate move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that was the storyline that they were going to go with. Well, Ali got there and basically decided that he didn't feel right about throwing a match, which is a boxing terminology for doing a job. And so he wouldn't do it. And there was so much money at stake, the match nearly fell apart, and they ended up trying to negotiate. And what they ended up doing was they both went in the ring. They had no idea what they were going to do other than it was going to be a shoot, and they had changed all these rules. I wish I remembered all the rules. But basically, Inoki had almost like no chance to do anything at all, and they ended up going to a draw. And if you actually were to watch the fight now, you would realize that Inoki actually should have won the fight, but it's 17 years later, and people didn't understand low kicks. Because, Inoki did tremendous damage to Ali's legs in that match with his low kicks. But people, what's he doing kicking the leg? Why doesn't he punch to his face? Which he wasn't allowed to do. He never pinned him. A couple of times Inoki would get Ali down, but Ali always got to the ropes right away because Inoki really wasn't that great of a ground wrestler to where he could, keep him in the center and turn him over and pin him. And I don't even know if he was allowed to use submissions in that fight. I don't know. I don't remember what the rules were. But anyway, that's what happened. It was it was a horrible, horrible show. It was a terrible match. It really hurt wrestling in Japan for a while. I can't say it hurt wrestling in this country for a while because people kind of just, but it was not a big business success outside of the Northeast. And really the reason it was a success in the Northeast was because of Bruno and Stan Hansen, who were on the same card. And that was like a big feud because Stan Hansen really broke Bruno's neck. So anyway, that's the story there. What's been up with Kurt Hennigan? Do you think he'll be working for WCW, WWF in the future? I can't imagine. I don't know why they would take him because they're looking for younger guys, not older guys.
I think he's coming in for a Portland show next month.
Yeah, for Piper. That's right.
Yeah.
We know Raw is in Denver tonight. Why has WWF shied away from holding Raw in Denver until now? Does it have to do with WCW as they had Nitro in Denver almost every year? No, it just happened to be due with routing. Denver's like in the middle of nowhere, and there's no city that's within driving distance that they wanted to run like two shows. Like WCW would run Colorado Springs. but WWF didn't want to run a taping out of Colorado Springs. So what they ended up doing is they've been out of Denver for a long time, and they're running Monday and Tuesday both in Denver, on the same night. So that's how they kind of got around the routing problem.
Remember that UFC in Denver where everyone was just dying because of the altitude?
I was at a UFC in Denver, and I don't remember that. I mean, the AWA wrestlers, the older wrestlers, they used to die when like Jerry Blackwell when he used to wrestle in Denver. Oh my God, he'd blow up so fast. But no, which UFC you're talking about? Because I don't remember that.
Maybe that was. I seem to remember. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it never happened.
There were the early UFCs weren't. The first UFC was in Denver.
Or maybe somebody used that as an excuse, and that's why I remember it.
Tank Abbott in Casper, Wyoming.
He remember Denver.
Okay, Tank Abbott fought Oleg Taktarov in Casper, Wyoming. They went 18 minutes, and Tank just ran out of gas, and so did Oleg. But Oleg, got the choke on at the end. That was a really famous match there.
Mm-hmm.
Casper they had pretty good altitude. I remember Casper. I ran up this hill, which is where that event center was in Casper, and you're running up like about 100 yards. And I'm going like, this altitude is so overrated, doesn't mean shit. And then all of a sudden, it's not like it's a gradual thing. It just hits you all at once. And it's like, oh my God. And then you're like dead.
Yep.
So, yeah. Because I was not trained in that altitude. I think that may have been what happened to Lennox Lewis over the weekend, too.
What were you running up the hill for, by the way?
Because everybody was complaining about the altitude, and I just wanted to find out if they were full of it or not. And they weren't full of it. Let's see. Has the WWF ever expressed interest in you for a position within the company with all of your wrestling knowledge? I guess I did work there one time, so I guess the answer would be yes, but not really. Let's see.
You better explain that story, because I can just hear the emails being typed as we speak.
All right. I worked for the WWF for 3 months in 1987, basically providing them with Japanese information, for them trying to do some research into the Japanese market. And that's about it. Let's see. This is a great show. I have a question. With the dearth of U.S. wrestling activity, I think you should try to cover Eastern Indies closer. I see you've been attending the UPW show. You're attending the UPW show this week, but Combat Zone, Jersey All Pro, and UCW New York are putting on awesome shows recently. I just watched the Combat Zone show the other day. Rick Blade, Trent Acid, and Low Key are all incredible performers. I'd like to get your opinion of them. Trent Acid I've seen is very good. Low Key I still haven't seen. I looked for a tape of him from the Super 8, and I couldn't find where I put the tape. But, everyone's raving about Low Key, so I'm sure he is. And Rick Blade I saw on the tape, too. Rick Blade's good. The Briscoes are good. They're like a high school junior and senior, I think. They're going to be real good. They're good workers. Red, Joel, and Jose Maximo, which are Mikey's guys, they do some great stuff in there. I've seen them. Have you heard about Super Dragon and Rising Sun? I heard that they had the best match on the XPW show. And as far as, I've seen Super Dragon for a while, but I heard that those guys had the best match on the XPW show on Saturday night. Anyway, let's go to Chris. Chris, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. I was curious about what you thought, what promotion was like the strongest cruiserweight division ever, like Japan, Michinoku, New Japan, or like Mexico, or like old WCW, like in the late 90s, they had quite a thing. Or is it La Super?
WCW in the late 90s, I think for its time period, New Japan, 1983, 84, 85 was real good. But it was, it didn't have the depth that WCW had, but it just was so new and innovative. AAA 1993, that would be another good one.
Wow, okay. And do you think WCW will bring in any international talent just because it would be cheaper and they'd want the exposure, or do you think...
No, because WWF doesn't think in those ways. So no.
They got all their own guys to bring in that are a lot cheaper than flying anybody.
No Otani?
Oh, there's no chance of Otani. They have no interest in Japanese wrestling right now.
Such a shame.
Well, Otani hasn't looked that good lately anyway, so...
I know, but I always think back to that Ultimo Dragon Otani Super J Cup match, and that's my favorite match.
Can you imagine reading a Ross report with Jim Ross talking about Otani needing to lose weight?
And one last weird book for you to read. Have you ever heard of Professional Wrestling as a Morality Play? It was a sociology book from like 1990.
I think I've read that book.
It's funny because it goes through the late 80s wrestlers, AWA and Glow Wrestling. This guy from, it was like Wisconsin or something, and he watched...
He was a professor, right?
and it was for his doctorate, I think.
Yeah, the professor thing. Oh, it was just like it was like, and it was really boring, right?
Yeah, it was bizarre. It had a really interesting bibliography in the end of like every article in the last 50 years that has mentioned pro wrestling.
Yeah, he looked at all these newspaper articles and took them serious. Was it one of those books
where they just tried to analyze it way too deeply?
Way too deeply. It's like they analyzed it so deeply they had no clue what they were. They had no clue.
But yeah, things that like wrestling promoters and wrestlers would never think of ever in their entire lives. But
good one was Jake the Snake uses a technique known as raping his victim, where he places the snake to humiliate them, and they use how Brutus the Barber Beefcake also rapes his victim by cutting the hair and things.
I'm sure that's what Beefcake was thinking when he cut those people's hair.
Right. It was just some idea where somebody had in a booking meeting, it's just a way to get a guy over,
Oh, jeez. All right, well, I appreciate that very much. And is Terry Funk working right now, or is not since that hardcore match, or what?
He worked in Puerto Rico. He worked in Puerto Rico last week, and he's going. I think the only thing he's got on his schedule is he's going to Germany in May.
I saw a match of him and Jerry the King Lawler from 1990 on this terrible Slams and Jams show the other day, and he was terrifying. And about 10 years ago, I was just terrified of Terry Funk. He was a maniac.
Yeah, imagine what he was like in the 70s when he was in his prime.
Oh, jeez. All right, thanks a lot, guys. You have a terrific show.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Justin. Justin, what's going on?
Hey, guys, what's up?
Not too much.
Oh, you guys have a great show.
Thank you.
That guy actually brought up something I wanted to talk about. Have you all got the Barely Legal DVD yet? Or checked it out?
Barely Legal DVD. ECW, no, I haven't seen. I haven't. No.
I was watching it, and I've seen the show before, but it just, now that ECW is gone, it kind of made me nostalgic, I guess, for it. I was wondering why Funk? Why Funk? I understand, but you had the Dreamer Raven thing going on. I mean,
why they give the title Funk? Because Funk was by far to the nation. Because you got to remember they had no TV.
Yeah.
They had nothing but some small syndicated TV. And Funk was, had a lot of WCW exposure and WWF exposure, and he was a name that every wrestling fan knew. And the climax of the pay-per-view was that, Terry Funk, 20 years after he won the NWA World Title, was going to win one more world title. So that's why they built the show around him. And he did phenomenal promos building up that match, too.
Yeah, he did. I agree with that. I just think that the Raven...
it lent some credibility to the title, too.
Yeah.
Terry Funk made that company. I mean, if you look at everybody who got over in that company, Dreamer was nothing except he was Terry Funk's tag team partner, so that's where he got... going, and a lot of the other guys like Public Enemy, who weren't even any good, got over because Terry Funk, put them over. Terry Funk made Mick Foley too, in Japan. It's like Terry Funk, Paulie and on the Beyond the Mat actually gives the speech, but that's a real deal, and they, he'll tell you anytime that Terry Funk put them on the map because the match that put them on the map was the three-way with Sabu, Shane, and Terry Funk, and Terry Funk made Shane. By selling for him and making Shane into being like a top wrestler, and he made Sabu because Sabu was just some guy on the indie scene.
Yeah.
And when he beat Terry Funk, all of a sudden it was like he became like a main player to at least some wrestling fans.
Yeah, I see. I'm not disrespecting Funk I mean, he did a great job. I'm just saying, it just seemed like Paulie never seemed. I guess maybe the fans wanted him, but it just never seemed like Paulie gave the fans what they wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Actually, he tried to.
I think it was more something like he knew what they wanted, and he had like a slower idea for the build than was happening in WWF and WCW at the time. Because like the whole Rob Van Dam thing, it wasn't like he never planned on giving them what they wanted. It was that he had this plan that was going to go over a course of a couple of years, and finally Rob Van Dam would get the title.
Yeah.
But things happened, and he never got the title.
Yeah,
he kept getting screwed. No, like I could tell you from talking to Paulie that Paulie. When it came to Rob Van Dam as champion, he knew about it before any fan even knew that they knew about it, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I mean, Paulie told me so far before you ever heard anyone go, Rob Van Dam should have the belt, Paulie told me, the big thing is Rob's going to have the belt, but it's got to be when I have good national television. If I give it away before I have good national television, it's not worth it. And then when he got on TNN, at first they were going to do it with Awesome, and then the whole thing was TNN sucks, so why should I do it on TNN? Wait till I have good national television, unfortunately.
He never got it.
He never got it. Times changed. Who was to know that, nobody would want TV of wrestling after, when we're talking about all this is during some big boom period where everyone wanted wrestling. Who was to think 3 years later that nobody would want wrestling on TV?
Yeah, but I'm just like the whole, and you look at it at the end of the TNN, or not even so much the end of the TNN, but why not just give Sandman the belt at the end? I know you don't like him, but and I
It's
know
got nothing to do with me. No, he wanted to give
not
it.
you. I mean, I know Heyman didn't like him.
Well, he wanted it to Rhino because he had a reason. You know, he thought that it would be, something to give Rhino. Now Rhino can go in as the last ECW champion when, in WWF, and it'd kind of give him something for the fact that,
Do you think he
Paulie
thought
really.
of that, though?
What?
Do you think he thought? I mean, do you think he
Oh,
thought
he
like
knew
that?
he knew he was done when he did that last pay-per-view. There's no question.
Oh, okay. I can just
Yeah.
I can just see them popping the crowd so much with Sandman having the belt though at the end. But I guess he was thinking ahead a little bit too far.
Well, Paulie didn't like Sandman.
I know.
So that
because of the whole
I mean,
Todd Gordon thing, or other reasons.
the way he walked out,
Yeah.
didn't, he walked out and he didn't come back for his farewell show when he went to WCW and just a lot of things. I mean, they just, he would come to work drunk and everything, but he was so over Paulie, Paulie used to, remember how Paulie would always say, I'll never take him back, and then, immediately he took him back?
And then
we all knew he would.
Yeah,
You know.
I mean, how could you not? But just because of there was, I gotta believe there was money in ECW, but he just needed to get somebody else to handle the business because looking at the bankruptcy things, I also don't think he had any idea what he's doing. But,
it got out of hand, but you know what?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, all that farm club stuff at the end. I mean, you got to know you're already big time in debt. Why keep doing this? Just, I know.
Well, that's probably why you end up stopping. But the thing is like, I mean, he might have been able to make. And there's so many things that like today. Put it this way: today he couldn't make it though, because today he couldn't get on TV.
Yeah, he wouldn't. Yeah, I can see that. And do you think any of those guys will see their money? Or any of the money?
No.
They'll see some of it in the bankruptcy. When things get sold and stuff, they'll get a percentage of it, but nowhere close to what they're owed.
But how would that work? I mean, if you're owed $5,000 and Heyman's family's owned $3 million, and you only make $1 million total selling everything, how does it get split equally?
Like
that's for the court. That's for the court to decide. But Heyman's family's going to get a lot of it because they have the most debt.
I think some of those guys won't see anything.
I mean, where did they make his money? Or they make?
What do you mean? Paul Heyman's father was a lawyer.
Wow, I was very impressed by that. $3.8 million. That's a lot of cash.
Well, I'm sure they're not happy about it.
Yeah. 2 more quick questions. I'll just let you all answer them. I'll hang up. The New Jack Brian Pillman thing. What was that all about? And
New Jack heard Brian Pillman say something, maybe out of context, maybe not out of context, and he freaked out and wanted to kill him, and they had to hold New Jack back. And Brian was in a wheelchair at the time, so it was kind of bad scene with, you get one of your wrestlers wanting to attack a guy in a wheelchair who nearly died in a car wreck, a couple weeks earlier, or months earlier, whatever it was. This is from Scott Foy, who goes, I saw the last EML pay-per-view over the weekend, and I have to say this is clearly the best one since the first one. 2 things made me wonder. As awesome as Shocker is...
Wait a second, the best one since the first one?
Yeah.
Was this the second one? Oh, wait, this was the third one.
No, it's like the fourth. It's like the fourth one.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I'm behind.
Okay. 2 things made me wonder. As awesome as Shocker is, am I the only one who thought he had started to look like an Hispanic spawn of Kid Cash and Disco Inferno? The other thing that struck me as amusing was seeing the crowd react with such indifference when the Technico team won the Mexican National Trios titles. Actually, I thought they popped pretty big. It seemed that Blue Panther has become the Mexican Steve Austin in terms of a heel that everybody cheered. Well, that's because he's just so awesome. Listening to the fans boo the Technico team and chant for Blue Panther made me think that perhaps solidify Blue Panther as a Rudo. They should have him assault the ring girls with a steel chair. And there was something about seeing Perro Aguayo unconscious and being stretchered out that put a smile on my face. I don't know. That was pretty weird. Let's see. It may have been a couple weeks ago, but I thought I would bring this up. I don't know if you saw it on the Daily Show a few weeks ago. Bob Costas was on. He and Jon Stewart were joking about Comedy Central and NBC competing. Jon Stewart says, well, here at Comedy Central, we have to buy our own sodas. Bob Costas comes back with, so have we ever since we started airing the XFL. Let's see. How would you like to be Lennox Lewis today? Oh, God. That's another story. Yes, he just didn't take it seriously, and he got knocked out, and now heavyweight boxing is like no one cares because they have a champion and no one knows his name. And I watched the fight, and I barely know the guy's name. Mike Sharp lives in Jersey and runs his school. He runs a promotion called Brawl in New Jersey, so that's what's going on with him.
Wait till Inoki puts the IWGP champion with some nobody at Pride and he gets knocked out.
Wait, with Fujita? That's why they put him with. I know that's probably what would happen. It's the curse of the shoots. You know, because what happens is when you're in a shoot and you think the guy you're fighting is a nobody and you don't train as hard and you don't get as hungry, and then all of a sudden you go into the fight and it's like, man, I'm not in top shape.
The other guy had been training.
Yeah, that's when Frank Shamrock fought Jeremy Horn at the UFC. I mean, the deal was they did this thing. I mean, it was almost like a double cross, not a double cross, but what happened was John Peretti gave Frank Shamrock a list of guys, and he didn't know any of the guys. And he just goes, this guy Jeremy Horn, he's like the easiest of all of them. So Frank Shamrock goes, okay, because they called him like on 3 weeks' notice to get him on this show, okay? So he was not, and so he goes, okay, I'll pick him. And then it turns out, Jeremy Horn was by far the toughest of all of them. And he's throwing Frank around like a rag doll for 15 minutes before, Shamrock finally got the knee bar on him. And it was like, oh my God. It's like, I mean, if he was in top shape, I mean, I'm not saying the fight would have been different, but it was just like another example. I mean, you just can't take things for granted in a fight because when one guy's hungry and in his best shape against a guy who's, really more talented but not in shape, the guy in the best shape can beat him.
Yeah.
What do you think of the comments Jerry Lawler made in reference to Stephanie McMahon being wild in college and even speculated to have been sleeping with Bruce Pritchard? I actually talked to Jerry Lawler about this, and he was pretty annoyed about the way things came out on the Internet, saying that, what happened was everyone read this thing, and then they took it out of the context he was saying. He said he was on Mancow, and all he was doing was joking. He wasn't serious about anything. He goes, how can anyone take seriously something on Mancow? Which, by the way, let's also keep that to Bubba the Love Sponge as well. And he's just going like, how can anyone take it seriously? And he goes, now everyone thinks I said Bruce Pritchard was sleeping with Stephanie McMahon. And, it was just like...
Plus there was one about, they wrote that they asked if he would care if Vince McMahon died, and he said no. And the thing was like, they asked Lawler, would you be sad if Vince died? And Lawler goes, or would you cry? And Lawler goes, I'd be sad if he died. I'd be sad if anybody died. I don't know if I would actually cry.
Because I don't know if I would actually...
taken out of context as well.
Yeah, he goes, I don't know if I would actually cry. Yeah. And I mean, the Stephanie McMahon, I think it was like a flippant remark where like, I think they go like, well, what's, I think they asked like, what's Stephanie like in bed or something? And it's like, how do you answer that question? But that's what you're doing on a radio show that's like, a goofy show like that. And I think, and I don't know exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect of, well, why don't you ask Bruce Pritchard? You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like an inside rib, on Bruce Pritchard, but it was not an insinuation. I mean, I don't know, but it's not, okay, let's, okay, who do we got? Okay, let's go to Mike. Mike, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing really good.
I just watched Survivor Series 97. I was wondering who all knew about the Bret Hart thing.
What? What did you say?
Who all knew about Bret Hart?
Did Shawn Michaels know about that or not?
That's one of the great mysteries of life. I believe he did, but many people believe he didn't.
He just seemed like he was pretty mad at the end.
Yeah, because I think he realized that it didn't go exactly the way it was supposed to.
That was the
I seem to remember like 3
seen.
weeks after it went down, he was telling people that he didn't know about it.
Okay. That he did know or he didn't?
That he did.
He told people in WCW that are his friends that he knew about it, but then like when it became a really big issue,
him talking out of his ass or whatever.
Yeah, but then like a week later or 2 weeks later, when it became such a big issue, then he started not knowing about it again.
What did Bret Hart think? Did he?
Oh, Bret Hart thinks Shawn Michaels knew about it. Yes, I know that much.
How come Owen never left? Wasn't Owen?
He left for a month, but ultimately he had no choice. I talked to Owen during that period, and it was a big issue in that he didn't want to go back, but he had no choice. I mean, it was either that or quit wrestling because Vince owned his contract, and I mean, Bret told him to go back if he couldn't get out of his contract. I mean, it was just one of those things. I mean, he was in a real bad position, and Vince, himself, promised him the world to come back.
Okay.
He was going to be the new Bret Hart and all this. And, the only thing that ruined that was that Shawn and Hunter never put him over, and he ended up not being the new Bret Hart. And then, other things happened, unfortunately.
Okay, and what's this Matt Rats thing? Where is that broadcast at?
It's not on TV yet. They just taped some stuff out of Calgary, and they're trying to shop it around. I mean,
MattRats.com.
Yeah, you could go to MattRats.com and get some info. I mean, it's a long way away. I mean, I wouldn't even say expect it on television in the September season. I mean, it's just something that they've got a tape, and they're going to shop it around and try to get funding.
They're trying to get it on national television or what?
I mean, hey, if they hit a home run, they'll get it on like some network on a Saturday morning, but no one knows. It's up to Bischoff to make those deals. That's why they hired Bischoff. Bischoff's there to make some deals.
Where are they getting their talent from?
Brian knows that better than me.
Just a lot of local independent guys. A lot of guys who did backyard wrestling that Teddy Hart trained. And I don't think there's any names you probably would have ever heard of.
Teddy Hart and Harry Smith.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow like local indies around the Northwest, you probably have heard the names, but as far as nationally, no.
Okay, my final question is, what sort of indies are in Minnesota area? That's where I live. And
I know Pro Wrestling America. I know Patera does some shows. I don't know.
Are they any good or any big names?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I haven't seen tapes of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, we're pretty much out of time. I just want to answer this one real quick. It's from Tony Jones, and he goes, not the Tony Jones. He goes, who is the current OVW and UPW champions? UPW heavyweight champion.
I hope it's not the real Tony Jones.
Yeah, I know, because he's got like the UPW Southern California title. The UPW heavyweight champion is Samoa Joe, who's actually defending it Wednesday against Tommy Dreamer on the show that we'll be broadcasting from. And the OVW champion is Flash Flanagan. Actually, he's not Flanagan. He's just Flash, and he won it on the three-way with Rico Constantino and Nick Dinsmore I think it was on April the 14th, whatever the day was or April the 4th, I think, the Bluegrass Brawl.
The Bluegrass Brawl, yeah.
Right. Anyway, that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank everyone for joining in, calling, and all the emails and everything. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have Dan Severin, and we'll be reviewing tonight's Raw show, and also we'll be talking a little about 0-1 because I'm watching that tape after Raw tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow at 5.